March 22, 1999. A woman sprints down a New Mexico dirt road, wearing nothing but a padlocked metal collar and dangling chains. She just escaped a soundproof torture trailer built by a serial killer. Because here's the thing about serial killers. Most pick victims who break. But every once in a while, they pick one who fights back.
Dozens of women were taken into David Parker Ray's toy box, a trailer turned torture chamber in Truth or Consequences.
These are 10 serial killers who picked the wrong victim. Some of them died for that mistake.
They think he may have killed dozens and dozens of women. But for 15 years, investigators have failed to find a single body.
Let's start with that woman on the road. Her name was Cynthia Vigil. She was 22 years old, and 3 days earlier, a man flashed a fake badge, told her she was under arrest, and drove her out to the middle of the New Mexico desert. That man was David Parker Ray, and he had a nickname the FBI would never forget: the Toy Box Killer. The toy box was real. It was a windowless trailer, soundproofed wall to wall, parked outside his home near Elephant Butte. Inside, Ray had built something out of a nightmare: surgical tools, a medical table, homemade torture devices, and a cassette tape he played for every victim explaining exactly what was about to happen to them. Investigators believe he did this for years. They believe the number of victims runs into the dozens. But Ray didn't work alone. His girlfriend, Cindy Hendy, helped him, and that partnership is exactly what saved Cynthia Vigil's life. Here's the thing about Ray's system. It was built for total control: locked collars, chains bolted to the floor, a victim who couldn't move an inch. What it wasn't built for was a moment of carelessness. On day 3, Ray left for work. Hendy got sloppy. She set the keys to Cynthia's chains down on a table, within reach. Cynthia didn't hesitate. She lunged for the keys. Hendy grabbed a lamp and cracked it over her head. But Cynthia had already found something sharp, and she used it. In the chaos, she unlocked the collar, threw open the trailer door, and ran, barefoot, bleeding, wrapped in chains, straight down the road until she reached a stranger's house. That stranger called 911, and that phone call ended everything. David Parker Ray was arrested, convicted, and sentenced to 224 years in prison. He never got to explain his tapes to a jury. In 2002, before he could serve much of that sentence, his heart gave out behind bars. Cynthia Vigil survived, walked out of that desert, and years later founded an organization to protect other vulnerable women. Ray built a machine designed so no one could ever escape it, but one woman proved him wrong.
A gruesome story leads off our newscast.
Milwaukee police found body parts in a North Side apartment, and now they wonder if they've uncovered some kind of death factory. Police found parts of bodies, leading them to believe the man they arrested is a mass murderer.
July 22, 1991. Milwaukee police are cruising through a rough part of the city when a man comes flying toward their squad car. He's got a single handcuff hanging off one wrist, and he's about to tell them something that will make national headlines for weeks. The man was 32-year-old Tracy Edwards, and he had just walked out of apartment 213, the home of Jeffrey Dahmer. By that summer, Dahmer had already killed 17 men and boys. His method was almost boringly simple. He'd approach someone at a bar or a mall, offer cash to come take a few photos, and hand them a drink. That drink was drugged. What came after was the stuff of horror films. Tracy Edwards got the same pitch: money for photos. He followed Dahmer home, but something felt off from the second he walked in. There was a smell in that apartment, boxes stacked in odd places, and Dahmer's mood kept shifting. Friendly one minute, ice cold the next. Then Dahmer snapped a handcuff onto Edwards' wrist and pulled a knife. Here's where Edwards did something incredible. He didn't panic. He didn't fight. Not yet. He talked. He kept Dahmer calm, agreed with everything, acted like a friend. He told Dahmer he'd be happy to pose for photos, happy to hang out, anything he wanted. He was buying time, and he was watching the door.
He said he was just in the city from Chicago. He was taking care of her sick grandmother, I believe, in West Allis. Yeah.
And did he have any further conversation with you and your friends?
Yeah, he was just talking. He said he was a professional photographer. He usually pays people for pictures and stuff like that if anybody was interested in making money at that time.
The moment came when Dahmer got distracted. Edwards swung, connected, and bolted for that door. He hit the street running and waved down the first squad car he saw. The officers almost didn't believe him. A man with a handcuff on his wrist, telling a wild story about a stranger with a knife. It could have been anything, but they went back with him to check the apartment. And what they found inside apartment 2113 is why we still say Dahmer's name today. Photographs he'd taken of his victims, remains he hadn't hidden well enough, evidence stacked in every room, one look, and there was no walking it back. Jeffrey Dahmer was convicted on 16 counts of murder and handed 16 life sentences. He never made it out. In 1994, another inmate beat him to death in prison. Tracy Edwards was the one intended victim who walked out of that apartment on his own 2 feet. 17 people didn't. He made sure there wasn't an 18th.
Big mood shift here. She was kidnapped by a serial killer, a man who took the lives of at least 3 teenage girls. But Kara Robinson Chamberlain is the one who got away.
June 24th, 2002. A 15-year-old girl is watering plants in a friend's front yard in South Carolina when a man walks up holding a magazine. He asks if she wants to subscribe. Then he pulls a gun. Her name was Kara Robinson, and the man with the gun had already gotten away with murder 3 times. Richard Markovonitz had killed 3 teenage girls in Virginia years earlier. 2 of them were sisters. He'd never been caught, never been suspected, and had quietly moved south to start over. As far as the world knew, he was nobody. He forced Kara into a plastic storage bin, drove her to his apartment, and restrained her. What he didn't understand was the kind of person he'd grabbed, because while she was trapped in that apartment, Kara Robinson was working. She memorized the route he drove. She read the serial number off the storage bin. She noted his pets, his furniture, the magnets on his refrigerator, appointment cards with a doctor's name, a dentist's name. She was building a case against him while she was still his prisoner. Then, Evanitz fell asleep. Kara worked her restraints loose, slipped off the couch, unlocked the door, and ran into the early morning. She flagged down a passing car and said the words that ended it. "My name is Kara Robinson. I was kidnapped, and I just escaped."
Times there would be consequences, good or bad, depending on my behavior. So if I listened and I obeyed, I would have a reward. And if I didn't, there would be a consequence. I knew I would escape from him, and I knew that I had to wait on him to become complacent.
Everything she'd memorized poured out. Police had a name, an address, and a description within hours. When they closed in, Evanitz ran, and days later ended the chase himself rather than face arrest. Inside his apartment, detectives found the evidence that finally solved 3 cold case murders in Virginia. Here's the part that gives this one a perfect ending. Kara Robinson grew up, went through the police academy, and became a cop. She spent years investigating crimes against children, the exact kind of predator who once threw her in a plastic bin. He picked a 15-year-old he thought was helpless. He picked a future detective instead.
Fellow was found guilty of murdering several young boys and burying them in his backyard.
Easter morning, 1988. A neighbor in Kansas City looks up to see a man wearing nothing but a dog collar, limping down the street, screaming for help. He just jumped out of a second-story window to save his own life. That man was Chris Bryson, and the house he'd escaped belonged to Robert Berdella, a man who ran a booth at the local flea market and, in his spare time, tortured people to death. Over 4 years, Berdella lured at least 6 young men into his home. What he did to them, he documented. Hundreds of Polaroid photographs and detailed written logs. A paper trail of horror he kept like a hobby. He was meticulous. He was careful. He thought he was untouchable. Chris Bryson was supposed to be victim number 7. Berdella held him captive for days, bound to a bed, subjected to things most people can't imagine. But Bryson did the one thing that works against a careful man. He made Berdella comfortable. He acted broken. He acted compliant. He convinced his captor there was no fight left in him. So Berdella got lazy. He tied Bryson's hands loosely, and he left a book of matches within reach.
I'm not trying to say he had a heart, but I guess he just didn't want me to die at that time. So
when Berdella left for work, Bryson went to work too. He burned through the restraints with those matches. He got to the window, and with nothing to lose, he threw himself out of it, breaking a bone in his foot when he hit the ground. He didn't stop. He crawled and stumbled until someone saw him and called police. What officers found inside that house matched every terrible thing Bryson told them: human skulls, envelopes of teeth, and 334 Polaroids documenting exactly who Robert Berdella really was. Berdella pleaded guilty and died of a heart attack in prison in 1992. He kept records of everything he did, certain no one would ever see them. One victim with a book of matches turned that entire archive into evidence.
July 1st will be the 30th anniversary of the conviction of Gary Heidnik. He is responsible for one of the most grotesque series of crimes ever to happen in Philadelphia.
For most of these killers, the wrong victim fought their way out with muscle and luck. This next one used something sharper. She used her mind. March 24th, 1987. A woman walks up to a payphone at a Philadelphia street corner, drops in a coin, and calls the police. She's about to lead them to a basement that will haunt the officers who see it for the rest of their lives. The woman was Josefina Rivera. The basement belonged to Gary Heidnik. Heidnik had been holding several women captive beneath his home, chained in a pit he dug into the floor. What went on down there was among the worst any American serial killer has ever done. 2 of the women he held never made it out alive. Josefina Rivera was the first woman he took, and she survived by understanding something about Heidnik that the others couldn't. She figured out that he wanted a partner, someone to trust, someone above the others. So she became exactly that. She played the role. She agreed with him. She made herself useful, made herself indispensable, made him believe she was on his side. It was a performance she held for months. And it worked. Heidnik trusted her so completely that he agreed to let her go visit her family, alone. The second she was out of his sight, the act was over. She found that payphone and called for help. Josefina Rivera walked police straight back to the house and freed the women still trapped inside. Gary Heidnik was convicted and in 1999 became one of the last people executed in Pennsylvania. He built his entire operation on control and fear. He was undone by the one captive who let him think he'd won, right up until the moment she picked up the phone.
He was arrested in Pensacola. Bundy had escaped from police custody. In fact, he escaped from prison several times and traveled across the country brutally raping and murdering young women in the process.
November 8, 1974. A shopping mall in Utah. A teenage girl is approached by a man in plain clothes who says he's a police officer. He tells her someone just tried to break into her car. He needs her to come with him. She almost did. And if she had, Ted Bundy might have gotten away with all of it. By late 1974, Bundy was killing young women across the American West at a horrifying pace. His trick was authority. He'd pose as a cop, a security guard, an injured man who needed help. He was charming, clean-cut, the last person anyone suspected. And it worked over and over again. The girl at the mall was 18-year-old Carol DeRanch. Bundy told her he was Officer Roseland. He recited details that sounded official. He got her to follow him out to his car, a tan Volkswagen Beetle. And the moment she was inside, the mask came off. He snapped a handcuff onto her wrist and reached for a weapon.
After this picture appeared, the task force received one call among thousands of others. This particular caller said a man named Ted Bundy looked, quote, something like the picture.
But Carol DeRanch did not freeze. She screamed. She clawed at the door. She fought him with everything she had and got that door open, spilling out onto the pavement. She ran into the road and threw herself in front of a passing car, and the couple inside pulled her to safety. That single escape became the thread that unraveled Ted Bundy. And here's the detail that sealed it. The same night he lost Carol DeRanch, Bundy abducted another young woman from a high school parking lot not far away. Police found a handcuff key on the ground in that lot, and it fit the exact cuffs Bundy had locked onto DeRanch's wrist. 2 crimes, 1 night, tied together by a single key. When police finally arrested him months later, it was Carol DeRanch who sat in the witness chair and pointed at him. The prosecutor said she never wavered once. Her identification gave investigators their first conviction against a man who had gotten away with everything up to that point. Ted Bundy was executed in Florida's electric chair in 1989. Carol DeRanch survived, kept her life private for decades, and only spoke publicly years later. Bundy fooled dozens of people with that fake badge routine. The one time it failed, it was the beginning of his end. Some killers are caught by one victim. This one was caught by an entire neighborhood. August 31st, 1985, East Los Angeles. A man tries to yank a woman out of her car in broad daylight. She screams one word in Spanish, "The killer." And within minutes, the most feared man in California is running for his life from a mob. That man was Richard Ramirez. The press called him the Night Stalker. For over a year, Ramirez had terrorized Los Angeles and the Bay Area with a string of home invasions and murders so random that no one felt safe. He struck at night through unlocked windows with no pattern anyone could predict. The whole city was buying deadbolts and sleeping with the lights on. Part of what made him so terrifying was the ritual. He left pentagrams behind. He forced people to swear to Satan. He seemed to enjoy the fear as much as the violence itself. But Ramirez made mistakes, and they added up. The problem for him was the people who lived. One woman he attacked was shot at point-blank range and survived to describe him. Another victim managed to free herself and get help. Every survivor added another piece to the picture. Then a fingerprint pulled from a stolen car finally put a name and a face to the terror. And once police released that mugshot, Ramirez's face was on the front page of every newspaper in the state. He didn't know it yet. Ramirez came back into East LA fresh off a bus, walked into a store to grab something to eat, and saw a rack of newspapers staring back at him. Every one of them printed with his own face. People in the store recognized him instantly. He bolted. He tried to steal a car. He tried to grab a woman, and the neighborhood erupted. Residents chased him down the street, tackled him, and held him until police arrived. When officers finally reached the scene, they weren't there to catch the Night Stalker. They were there to save him from the people who already had. Richard Ramirez was convicted of 13 murders and sentenced to death. He died of cancer on death row in 2013, decades before the state ever got around to executing him. He spent a year making an entire region feel powerless. In the end, an ordinary neighborhood took him down with their bare hands.
Bachelor number 1.
Yes.
What's your best time?
The best time is at nighttime.
Why do you say that?
Because that's the only time there is.
This episode, Bachelor number 1 is Rodney Alcala. Rodney Alcala wins the date. But what the Bachelorette does not know is that the man she has just picked
You did it with the one answer.
may turn out to be one of the most brutal and terrifying serial killers in history.
In 1978, a smiling contestant won a date on a national television game show. The audience clapped. The host grinned. Nobody in that studio knew they were looking at an active serial killer. His name was Rodney Alcala. And 10 years before that TV appearance, he'd already left his first victim for dead. September 25th, 1968, Los Angeles. Alcala offered a little girl a ride, telling her he knew her parents. He took her back to his apartment and attacked her. She was just 8 years old. She should not have survived. But she had a guardian angel she never met, a passing motorist who happened to see the girl get into Alcala's car and felt something was wrong. That stranger called the police. An officer kicked in Alcala's door just in time. Alcala escaped out the back, but the girl was found alive and rushed to the hospital. Her name was Tali Shapiro. Here's the infuriating part. Tali's family, terrified, moved out of the country before the case could go to trial. Without their daughter to testify, prosecutors couldn't make the most serious charges stick, and Alcala served only a short sentence before walking free. Free to keep killing for years, free to smile his way onto that game show. But Tali Shapiro was not finished with Rodney Alcala. Decades later, when Alcala finally faced trial for a string of murders, an adult Tali Shapiro walked into the courtroom and took the witness stand against the man who'd attacked her as a child. The first victim who got away came back to help make sure he never got away again. Representing himself, Alcala offered a hollow apology in court. Tali Shapiro didn't give him the satisfaction of a response. Rodney Alcala was sentenced to death and died in prison in 2021. He built a second life as a charming TV bachelor. The little girl he thought he'd silenced in 1968 outlived him and testified against him with her own voice. Not every killer is undone by a fight. Some are undone by something as boring as a license plate. January 2nd, 1981, Sheffield, England. Two police officers on a routine patrol notice a car parked in a quiet driveway with a man and a woman inside. Nothing dramatic, they decide to run the plates. That decision ended one of the longest manhunts in British history. The man in the car was Peter Sutcliffe. For 5 years, the press had called him the Yorkshire Ripper, and for 5 years he'd made the police look helpless. He'd killed 13 women across northern England. Officers had actually interviewed him multiple times during the investigation and let him go every single time. A hoax tape had sent the entire manhunt chasing the wrong suspect for months. That night, Sutcliffe had picked up a woman named Olivia Rivers, and when the officers ran his plates, something didn't add up. The plates were false, stolen and screwed onto his car. They arrested him for the plates. Just the plates. But as they questioned him, one officer realized this quiet man matched the Ripper description almost exactly. Before he was fully searched, Sutcliffe asked to use the bathroom and quietly ditched a hammer, a knife, and a length of rope. An officer went back the next day, found the weapons, and the whole thing collapsed. Sutcliffe confessed. Olivia Rivers survived that night and later called herself the luckiest woman in Britain. She was right. She was almost certainly meant to be victim number 14. Instead, a random plate check turned her into the last person the Yorkshire Ripper ever picked up. Peter Sutcliffe was convicted of 13 murders and spent the rest of his life behind bars, dying in custody in 2020. 5 years of terror, 9 police interviews, and in the end, he was caught over a set of stolen plates. We'll finish back where we started, with a woman alone with a killer, forced to fight for her life. Except this time the fight happened on a moving freeway. Late October, 1958, Southern California. A young model gets into a car with a man who's promised her a photography job. Minutes later, he's speeding down the Santa Ana freeway with a gun in his hand, and she realizes she is not going to a photo shoot. The man was Harvey Glatman, and he'd done this before. Glatman posed as a professional photographer to lure aspiring models. He'd promised them magazine work, gotten them a loan, and murdered 3 young women, keeping photographs of each as trophies. He was quiet, awkward, forgettable, exactly the kind of man nobody feared until it was too late. His fourth intended victim was 28-year-old Lorraine Vigil. A modeling agency sent her to meet him. Something about him felt wrong from the start, and when he blew past the address and merged onto the freeway, she knew. Then he pulled the gun and tried to tie her up while driving. Lorraine Vigil refused to become his fourth trophy. She grabbed for the weapon. The two of them fought over it right there in the front seat at highway speed, the car swerving across lanes. The gun went off and grazed her leg, but she didn't let go. She sank her teeth into his wrist and wrenched the weapon out of his hand. The car skidded onto the shoulder, and as they tumbled out, a set of headlights appeared. A highway patrolman who'd spotted the chaos. He found Lorraine holding the gun on the man who tried to kill her. Once he was in custody, Glatman confessed to everything and led police to his hidden collection of trophy photographs. The evidence that told the world exactly who he was. Harvey Glatman was executed in 1959. He'd spent years choosing women he was sure couldn't fight back. He chose wrong once, and once was all it took. 10 killers, 10 predators who spent their lives believing they held all the power. Every one of them was brought down by the same thing, a victim who refused to play the part they'd been assigned. Some fought, some ran, some just remembered every detail until they could hand it to the police. But they all had one thing in common. They were the wrong victim, and in the end, they were the reason a killer got caught.